Hello, it's me, Carrie. So I've been wanting to do more unedited rambles, and this one is on the topic of why I think the grading system is backwards, at least in the US. And I've been having this thought since around the beginning of high school, which was 13 years ago for me. And I've been out of school for about 3 years now, so you might wonder why I still care about this. And it's because nothing has really changed, and I feel like younger people who are still in school now still have to deal with this. So let's get into the gist of what I mean. So, in the school system, when you start a semester, your grade basically starts at 100% because the first assignment is usually some easy like participation thing and you get 5 out of 5. And then as the semester wears on, you only lose points from that. You can only go down. So, on this graph, you can see that let's say you have 3 tests, you get A's on all of them, 98, 96, 93. And then the last test or the last project, you get an F. Maybe because you didn't read the rubric right, or maybe you just got really sick that time, or maybe it was like a bad participation score because your teacher and you got into a fight. You got an F. The average of all 4 of those scores is a 77%, which is a C in the US. And most people think of a C as pretty bad. I know people say like, oh, a C is average. But in this day and age with great inflation, if you see a C, most people are crying. So I think this is bad because it's kind of like negative reinforcement. Instead of being excited to learn stuff, you're more worried like what single point of failure is going to cause my grade to tank. And it's basically fear of pain instead of excitement of pleasure or fascination. Now, if you compare that with the real world, this is different depending on what profession you're in. But let's say you're an artist and you do commission art. Basically, people will pay you, clients, to draw art of them. Let's say you try different genres of art, and in like one genre, you get like no clients. You make $0 per artwork drawing you make. But then you try a different genre, maybe like landscapes. You get $1. Still an F, $1 for a whole painting, awful. So you try a different genre, maybe like figure drawing, and you get $7. But then suddenly you try a different genre entirely, like maybe like fractal art, and somehow you just hit the nail on the head. You struck it rich, and some clientele out there is super rich and will pay you $8,000 per artwork. And if you average these all together, you end up making $2,000 per project on average, and that outcome is life changing because 2,000, like, I don't know how long it takes you to draw this art, but if you're making this much money, you can quit your job, you can like move to a different city. Like, this will affect like literally every aspect of your life, even though 3/4 of the projects you ever tried failed on a traditional sense. And I think what happens here is the baseline is 0, and everything you could possibly try only brings your average up. So this should be positive reinforcement because now you're not so... I mean, I guess you are worried about like failure because every time you get another 0 or 1, you are wasting time. But all it takes is one success out of like hundreds or thousands of attempts of like a blowaway success to bring the average up to a point where overall you are succeeding. So I think there's a big difference here, and it means that when you're in school, they're training you to be very risk averse. Whereas the people who really succeed in the real world are the ones who are very excited to take on risks. And I see this all the time, especially as someone who kind of grew up in this STEM bubble with very math and academic and like science focused friends, is that everyone around me in those school settings is very smart, very intelligent, has all these cool projects or at least cool ideas they're starting, but they just don't ever post them or finish them because they're worried it's like not perfect yet or they haven't added the finishing touches. So I, as like their friend, see all these like incomplete projects with a whole ton of promise. And I'm like, just post it, just get it out there even though it's not perfect. You have still like a few like finishing touches left, just still post it anyway. But they're like, oh, I'm worried that like if I post it now, then the critics are gonna say like, why is that artwork on the corner looking bad? And like clearly the music isn't finished yet. I need to perfect it before I release it. And then they end up, only seeing this side of the equation and not the 8K. And I think they feel that way because throughout all of childhood, we have been trained to think that if we haven't perfected like a submission, this is going to happen, the school grades. Like if you have AAAF, like let's say there's 4 categories on a game you're developing, such as like gameplay mechanics, storyline, artwork, and music. if a single one of those attributes fails, like on the graph above, your game is, or like if you grade it on a normal rubric way, your game is like average. It won't be a stellar success that you can live off of. When in reality, when games succeed in the indie space, at least, it is one element that tends to be like so far above what anyone else had thought that it like easily carries the rest of the team. I think good examples of this are Minecraft, which has very subpar graphics and like not that innovative, like, how do I say, I guess the storyline is kind of interesting, but the element that really blew everyone out of the water is the creativity, the mechanics of gameplay, how free you are to build whatever you want, and that carried the rest of the game. And I think if you think about like other indie games that have blown up, like Undertale or Stardew Valley, it's always this one mechanic or this one style or whatever that easily carried it, whereas the rest was very like middling and didn't need to be that good. Because if, let's say, like if the creator of Minecraft invested all their time into perfecting the artwork, they would just be wasting their time, and then like the game would come out 10 years later. I mean, I guess it would still succeed by then, but like at that point, you know, in the real adult world, during those 10 years or however long it takes you to perfect something, you start needing to actually pay bills. You need to actually get a job to cover all the expenses like rent that come with living life. So I think, you know, this is why I think the school grading system is backwards. It's like focusing on your failures and like, yeah, like your score is really dependent on how many failures you have instead of focusing on your successes and counting how many successes you have. And if I were to run a school, the thing is like I don't have any training in how to run a school, so I really don't want to claim like I know anything. But I think what I would do is make it more okay to entirely like crash out on certain projects. Like let's say it's like a computer science class and you just don't understand recursion very well. If there's like a class assignment for the recursion unit and you get a 21, it really shouldn't like doom your whole chances of ever succeeding in the class. Like I think maybe what you can do is like assign 10 different projects throughout the year, and then like, I don't even know how this would work, but at the end of the year, maybe the teacher can look at all 10 projects and sort of gauge how much like passion and energy there was in all of them, and maybe one of them is just a blowout, like this person has so much passion for this one project, that's enough for them to succeed the whole class. And that's how I would do it, is like you only need one stellar success. I'm saying the same thing over and over. I know that would be difficult though, because a lot of students would wait to the last minute, as they always do, and then they're going to wonder like, well, if I don't know if all my other projects count as successes, like how am I going to know if I need to pull an all-nighter for the last one? I know there's like caveats why this wouldn't work, because in order for this real world graph to matter, like you have to be kind of self-driven, and like you never know when this is going to come up. Like some people will keep trying and only ever see this, so you never know. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that, you know, at the start I said this is very dependent on what field of work you go into. Like I said artist because that's the thing where the pay rates can vary a lot. But if you are, let's say, cooking meals for a restaurant, like Italian food, and let's say you adopt this mindset on the bottom, that could actually be bad, because let's say a really good meal is like this 8K whatever, but then like you flunk out on 3 other meals and there's like poison in the food. It literally poisons the customer. Like I as a customer would not go to a restaurant where there was even a 10% chance that the food would poison me. So if you work in the restaurant industry, you really need to be trained to avoid failure at all costs. Like you need to follow the FDA regulations, and every single meal needs to like check off certain things, and otherwise you will be shut down. So if you are in the restaurant industry, you do kind of have this mindset where like you should get a bad grade if a single meal is like killing a customer, obviously. And I think that, you know, that kind of mindset is really important to like not just the restaurant industry, but also like whoever builds the roads or the pipes or the infrastructure that has the city running. We as the citizens of the city really just, we're not looking for stellar success like Minecraft. We're looking for reliable pipes and plumbing and lighting and electricity. Like I think in that regard, like the school grading system makes sense. But I think it's like, the thing is that's not everyone, you know. There could be maybe a school system where you kind of pick which path you want to go on, like the fields that require reliability, in which case this makes sense, or you want to go down the more creative side, or the more like risk taking side, or the entrepreneurial side, which would look more like this. And I think the reason I think about this is because when I was in high school, I spent so many hundreds of hours wasted thinking about things that I really don't think matter. Like one of them was, I was in this AP US history class, and the passing periods were only like 4 minutes or maybe 5 minutes. So there were a couple times when I would be late to class because I was like running from on the other side of the school. And I remember I would ask the teacher like, "Oh, did that count as a tardy?" And the teacher would sometimes say like, "Oh, Carrie, you're the only person who cares about tardies." But I was really worried that like, who knows, by the time I applied for college, maybe like my threshold for getting accepted into my dream school was like right below the threshold. Like you never know if you're going to be on that like deciding line, and like one extra tardy would like push me below, but one fewer tardy would push me above, and that's why I cared. But I think in reality what got me into Stanford, which was my dream school, was not about how many tardies it had. It was because I could write an essay about my online communities I built, like BFDI and Scale of the Universe, and that's what led to this. Like this is what Stanford calls spiky students or pointy students, people who are not well-rounded. They have like one aspect that really shines through. And I guess, if you want to get into a good school, you do need good grades overall, but like that is never enough because, there's so limited spots that something needs to kind of make you shine out, like stand out. And that's what BFDI was for me. So I wish I could go back to when I was 16 and just tell my past self, like, stop panicking so much that you are like doing badly on your history test. You're getting like a 70%. I got a 70% on my first AP US history test, and I thought like my days of being a straight A student were over. But like I ended up finishing the whole class with a B, and it really didn't affect anything because I had like my essay was not at all about my history performance, because I wasn't that interested in history back then. I never envisioned I would be a history major. So I just think that like stress is the number one killer. Sometimes they say like the things that stress causes on the human body are just so bad overall that I just can't believe that so much of the stress that I was feeling in high school was misplaced. And I'm not saying that like you should start like flunking every grade, but I just think that like when you zoom out on the overall trajectory of your life, like when you reach a certain age and you start reminiscing about what really mattered to you, it's always these like things that the teachers didn't assign you. It's like the time that like you decided with a friend that, yeah, we're gonna go drive and take a road trip to Yosemite just for the hell of it. Like, and I just wish I had a more whimsical, like, go-getter attitude, which I think I've like tried to train myself to have in my mid and late 20s, but I definitely didn't have as a teenager. And like, and I know there's like teenagers who watch me now, so maybe I could like try to instill that into you while you still have the chance. But I also think that like while you are a teenager in school, you can't escape this. Like if you get an F in a class, usually it does mean you have to like repeat a grade or something. And that's why I think this grading system, like the entire institution, needs to be changed. And I do hear there are like non-traditional schools out there that, like Montessori schools is one example, where it's focused less on a rigid curriculum and more just letting kids explore. But I went to a Montessori preschool from ages like 3 to 5, and I barely remember it, so I don't think that counts. Like the vast majority of students in the US are being pushed through this kind of system. And the last thing I was going to say is that in terms of positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement, I feel like science loves to say that like positive reinforcement is more effective. And there's a lot of studies about it. I will say that it's like not a resounding agreement. You might not be able to see what's on my screen. Because like I will admit I haven't read every paper on this subject, but it does feel like studies have shown that although you get behavioral change from both positive and negative reinforcers, it is the positive reinforcers that have longer lasting behavioral change effects. And I mean, this isn't the article or like the scientific study itself. This is just a like pop science page, so I won't like take its word for it. But like I feel like I've read over and over again that like positive reinforcement is just better. And also like we're humans, and I think we have every right to want to live our best life. So aside from even what the science says, like positive reinforcement feels better, and I think that's enough justification to want that. Like you want to be feeling reward for your cool side project more than your punishment for getting an F on a test you didn't care about. Like, it's okay to want things and choose a path that like aligns with that, even if the teachers are like, that's not good for you. And then there's one other point of view I wanted to talk about. I can't remember. Positive. Oh yeah, motivational speakers. So the topic of fail faster. I hear this all the time. Like whenever you talk to, well, it's a blend. Like motivational speakers who would come to middle schools and high schools would always say, "Don't be scared of failure. Go out and like it's not about how often you succeed. It's about how often you dust the dirt off your shoulders and get up again." And I feel like that's easy to feel like that's the right message to give kids. And when you just say that to them, you're like, well, we taught the kids to not be scared of failure. We did it. But like the kids are thinking about their grades way more than they even cared about the motivational speaker. I trust that when the motivational speaker leaves that high school rally and goes off to the next school, the very next period, the students are thinking again about the test that they're going to fail because, well, once you get to your English class, like you're thinking about the English grade. So the other thing about the fail faster is that I know it is spoken very often in the entrepreneurial world. Like what venture capitalists often do is invest in like hundreds of companies because all it takes is just one of those companies to turn into like the next Amazon, and then the venture capitalist like gets a return. And I know that people have like a lot of valid grievances with the way that modern day capitalism works, which I agree with. But I'm talking more on the personal level. Like I'm not talking about like the large scale of like billions of dollars and like thousands of employees. I'm talking more on the personal level of like when you create these passion projects on your own, which ones give you this validation in life. Not even looking at the money. Well, I mean, I guess money does matter, but like not even looking at the money, you will feel a lot better if you had tried 4 things and only one of them succeeded than if you, like I think you already get the idea. It's like, I think fail fast can apply even if you aren't a capitalist, which I think in many ways I'm not. Like, I still think that like every time I uploaded a whole bunch of projects to Carry KH and they weren't well edited and some of them flopped, I'm so glad I did it because like at least I know now that the audience had the chance to react to it. If it was such a good idea, like it was out there in the world to interact with the greater marketplace of ideas. It's out there. Like if I ever spent too much time editing a video, I kind of ended up regretting that like I spent so much time that could have been spent on like the next idea. So I agree 100% with the fail fast philosophy, but I don't think it has to be in this like venture capitalist lens only. And I think, also when schools think that they can just like shout this at students to get them to feel less fearful of failure, like dust your shoulders off and get up and like you can conquer the world again. It is very hypocritical when like the very same day they're still talking about test scores and this mindset re-enters the child's brain. Like you need to make the child feel like they can spend a huge swath of time, like months on end, without failure or fear of failure of low grades for them to actually like for their brain to rewire, because the goal is to like rewire their brain to feel like they can actually conquer the world. And that's not going to happen in a 1-hour rally or even a 1-day rally if like the general year-long time scale is like get a good grade by the end of the year. So I think I have made my point very clear. A lot of my friends in the YouTube space, like I feel like have similar ideas, and sometimes I feel like when I talk to them, it's very preach to the choir-y. Like we're saying the same things over and over again, and I'm like, can we please move on to a different topic? But I think it doesn't do much to just talk about it and not put it on the world, because like the goal is to reach people who hadn't thought this way in the past and change their view so that like maybe different institutions can change. But I mean I think that's a very unfeasible goal. My idea here is just to kind of let people know how I feel, and maybe if they're a teenager, like start turning those gears in their head so that they can get to where I am mentally, but not take until they're 27. Maybe they can like get that realization when they're like 18 or 19. Fail fast, succeed faster. And all it takes is one. Like I just keep thinking, or even just a few, like maybe you don't want to rely on one, but like if you try 100 times and your success rate is only 5%, which is considered dismal by most standards, you'll have 5 successes. And like very few people in life have like 5 different things that are all going for them. And I feel like that's why, you know, when I coded just a billion games when I was a kid, like literally there's like a website which is no longer playable, but like GTTT, AT&T 100 variations. Like I don't know what caused me to do this, but when I was 14, from like 12 to 14, I wanted to just make as many games as I could, and there's 100 variations. Like I think if I made 2 a week, it would take me a whole year to make this, but I did it. And well, none of these, well, okay, a few of these succeeded. Like 3D, you can't play it anymore, but 3D really succeeded. And I also think in terms of like my own like mental like excitement, like the ones I remember are 3D, color, this whole color combo I was really proud of. Version 2 I was proud of. And also, where's the one that tells a story? It's graphics. It was revealing a picture. This one is like, it brings back a lot of memories because you play the game and it reveals more of a story as you keep playing. Oh, and oh my god, I just remembered my first AI ever. Okay, like this is like a really good example. Because I was saying like, oh, some of these are big successes, but not in the financial sense because it's only like my own creative vision. But different platforms automatic, even though it's not playable, and it claims new, but this was made in December 2010, was my first ever AI that I ever coded. And I hadn't learned anything about AI. I just wanted to make a computer algorithm that could play my own game and not die. And I wanted to see how far I could get. And this was undoubtedly the spark that led me to make an evolution simulator a couple years later, which then led to me posting that on YouTube, and then that went viral. And then, you know, that was a whole arc of my YouTube journey, is like making videos about neural networks and evolution simulators. And, you know, that did make me a livable income for about, you know, 3-4 years before like BFDI ended up taking over, which, you know, I can talk about that at a different time. But yeah, like I was talking about, like, yeah, like I think even if you look at it as financial lens, like these 100 games had a lot of influence. So yeah, you just gotta keep throwing these on the internet. And all my friends who have those unfinished games and unfinished things, and like they just need to work on the artwork, they just need to add music. Like no, just get it out there and add the music later. Yeah, I think you're catching my drift. It is almost noon. It's 11:58, so I should go eat lunch now. But thank you. Why do I have this open? I don't even know. Yeah. Anyway, the grading system in the US, I wish it were flipped. I wish it started with a grade of 0, and then you would gain points or something if you did good things. But that you were never punished for doing bad things. Unless it was like bad behavior, like punching other students. But like for bad academic performance, it just means that wasn't the subject for you, or that just wasn't the topic for you. But try another one and you could succeed, and you don't need to feel bad about it. Like there's so much feeling bad in the education system that I feel like it literally is traumatizing kids. Anyway, also traumatizing kids because like for the rest of their lives you'll have like nightmares while you sleep about like not turning in an essay on time. That isn't healthy. Like there's no reason we should accept that. Like humans even just like 200 years ago didn't have to deal with that. And like, you know, people in their 60s are still like, oh, I had a dream where I was late for class. I don't know. I just think that's just horrible. So yeah, thank you for watching this ramble. Bye.